Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
Bold and the Beautiful took Sheila Carter and Luna Nozawa to the point of no return for redemption, but ever they set up a way to finagle them back onto the CBS cleaner. Now Remy Price is about to start his trip back into the Forrester family's home. But he formerly crossed a line that left him with zero redeeming rates for the Forresters. Yet, he shows up at FC this week. Bold and the Beautiful Sheila Carter and Luna Nozawa make insolvable strides. Bold and the Beautiful had Sheila Carter as the #1 adversary of the people after her dangerous reign. Also her recently discovered granddaughter, Luna Nozawa, eternalized the cold thoroughbred line within the family, conceivably indeed beating Sheila's crimes. While both women should be behind bars for the rest of their lives, this is Bold and Beautiful. So, that means their world offers plenitude of alternate chances. We've seen both Sheila and Luna get those chances. These are chances that most probably would not be in real life. And now it's Remy Price's turn. B&B gave Remy Price a clear path to exit. Bold and the Beautiful has Remy Price at Forrester Creations this week. Why this Joe would indeed take a chance at roving around the structure has suckers scratching their heads. He's formerly advised his new love interest, Deke Sharp, not to mention his name while working at FC. So why chance it by visiting Deke at work? But Remy does, and the trials suggest he's possessed into meeting Deke SEO workers, including Electra Forrester. Remy firstly ended up in LA because he stalked Electra, following her to this megacity. Because she didn't want him, Remy posted her face on some salty prints and set them free on social media. Electra came devastated and lowered by what Remy did. The climax of his stalking took place on the top of a structure, where he plotted with Electra. During that event she was close to falling. But Will Spencer jumped in and saved her. After this, he went to jail, and Bold and the Beautiful suckers allowed. This was the character's exit from the cleaner, since he wasn't involved in any plot. Bold and the Beautiful redeeming Remy? Then we go again, as Remy Price, who went to jail for what he did to Electra, is suddenly in the midst of the Forresters formerly more. Deke participated with his family, Hope Logan, that he's in a relationship and that they're living together. But like Remy requested, Deke no way bared Remy's name, and while his father, Deacon Sharp and many others also know Deke is involved, they don't know his new mate's name. But they will this week. In what looks like another attempt at insolvable redemption, Remy Price brings gasps when Deke introduces him to his Forrester co-workers. Deke will probably learn why Remy brings a look of horror to Electra's face, which will presumably leave him devastated. But depending upon what Bold and the Beautiful does next, it could mean Remy works his way back into good standing. They've done it ahead with numerous characters, most lately Sheila Carter and Luna Nozawa, so why not Remy Price? In the universe of the Bold and the Beautiful, redemption is not a gentle path of self-discovery, it is a brutal, often illogical, baptism by fire. It is a process reserved for those who have plunged to the very depths of moral bankruptcy, a narrative crucible where the most irredeemable characters are thrust back into the light, scarred and forever changed, but inexplicably granted a second act. Two women, Sheila Carter and Luna Nozawa, have recently undergone this very ordeal, emerging from the flames not as purified saints, but as permanent fixtures in a world that once vowed to exile them forever. Their journeys have set a staggering precedent, one that now threatens to open the door for a far more unsettling return, that of Remy Price. The concept of a point of no return is a familiar landmark in Los Angeles. For Sheila Carter, that point was not a single act, but a sprawling archipelago of them, kidnappings, shootings, impersonations, and a body count that made her name synonymous with terror. Her attempted murder of Finn and Steffi Forrester was meant to be the final, unforgivable chapter. It was an act that should have cemented her permanent incarceration, severing her from the civilized world forever. The angry threats against her were not just words, they were vows sworn by the entire Forrester and Spencer clans. Rich Forrester's promise to see her rot in a cage was a sentiment echoed by every character with a pulse. And yet, the impossible happened. Through a combination of legal technicalities, her marriage to a surprisingly steadfast Deacon Sharp, and a baffling, almost supernatural ability to evade permanent consequences, Sheila was not just free, she was, for a fleeting moment, a wife. Her baptism was a violent immersion in the consequences of her own nature, but she emerged, gasping, on the other side. The encouraging words from Deacon, "People can change, Sheila. I believe you have," were a fragile life raft in a sea of universal contempt. They were not enough to wash her clean, but they were enough to keep her afloat, a permanent, unsettling specter at the feast. Luna Nozawa's journey to damnation was different in scale but equally shocking in its moral compromise. The sweet, guileless intern, beloved by R.J. Forrester, was revealed to be the catalyst for corporate espionage that nearly crippled Forrester Creations. Her crime, born of a twisted sense of loyalty to her mother, Poppy, and a desperate desire to belong, was a cold-blooded betrayal. She didn't wield a gun like Sheila, but she wielded a keyboard with the same devastating effect. The angry threats she faced were less about physical safety and more about social and professional annihilation. To the Forresters, her actions were a violation of trust so profound it felt, to Ridge, like a knife in the back from the one person we never thought to guard against. Her redemption arc was a masterclass in emotional finagling. Through tearful confessions, the unwavering, almost saintly forgiveness of R.J., and the complex web of familial loyalty that involved her mother and her aunt, Lee Finnegan, Luna was slowly, painstakingly, reintegrated. Her baptism was one of shame and public humiliation, a scalding immersion in the consequences of her poor judgment. The encouraging words from Hope Logan, "We believe in the person you truly are, Luna, not the mistake you made," served as the balm that soothed her burns. She was given a second chance that, in any realistic corporate or legal setting, would be a fantasy. But this is the world of B&B, where narrative necessity often trumps realism. These two redemptive journeys, one for a serial offender and one for a first-time but profound betrayer, have rewritten the rules of engagement in Los Angeles. They have proven that no sin is truly mortal, no line is permanently uncrossable. This newly established precedent of impossible redemption now casts a long, dark shadow over the sudden reappearance of a man whose crimes were of a different, but equally insidious, nature, Remy Price. Remy Price's original exit from the canvas was designed to be final. His storyline was a chilling cautionary tale about obsession and the dark side of the digital age. He wasn't a business rival or a scorned lover from the past, he was a stranger whose fixation on Electra Forrester, Hope Logan's fiercely independent and creatively brilliant daughter, escalated with terrifying speed. It began with what seemed like admiration for her work, but it quickly curdled into a toxic obsession. He followed her from Europe to Los Angeles, his presence shifting from coincidental to calculated. When Electra unequivocally rejected his advances, Remy's wounded ego festered into a weapon of mass destruction. In an act of profound violation, he used his digital skills to superimpose Electra's face onto explicit photographs and unleashed them across social media. The devastation he wrought was not physical, but it was existential. Electra, a young woman carving out her own identity in the shadow of a legendary family, was publicly humiliated, her reputation and sense of self shattered in an instant. The climax of his reign of terror was a physical struggle on a rooftop, a moment of pure cinematic horror. As he confronted a terrified Electra, his grip on reality as tenuous as her footing near the edge, it was Will Spencer, a voice of reason and courage, who intervened. The image of Will pulling Electra from the brink while Remy was subdued by security was the cathartic conclusion the audience craved. Remy was arrested, charged, and sentenced. His departure to a prison cell felt like a permanent deletion from the story. He had crossed a line that left him with zero redeeming qualities in the eyes of the Forresters, the Spencers, and the audience. He was not a complex villain with a tragic past, he was a stalker, a digital predator, and his exit was a clear path to narrative oblivion. Which is why his presence at Forrester Creations this week is nothing short of a seismic event. The air in the design office was, as always, a heady mixture of creativity and tension. Hope was reviewing a new line with her daughter, Electra, whose resilience in the face of Remy's attack had become a core part of her strength. Deke Sharp, Deacon's son and a newly hired junior designer, was bustling about, trying to prove his worth. He was a young man eager to distance himself from his father's checkered past, to build something legitimate and respected. Unbeknownst to everyone in the room, Deke was carrying a secret that was currently riding the elevator to their floor. He had confided in his aunt, Hope, that he was in a new, serious relationship, that he was happy and living with his partner. But, honoring a specific and peculiar request, he had never revealed the man's name. "He's a private person," Deke had explained. "He had a rough past and he's trying to move on. He asked me not to mix my work life with his." Hope, ever supportive, had respected his wishes, though a nagging worry lingered in the back of her mind. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime. Deke looked up, and a genuine, bright smile broke across his face. "Hey! You decided to stop by." All eyes turned to the entrance. And there he stood. Remy Price. He was dressed casually, trying to project an air of nonchalance, but his eyes held a nervous energy, scanning the room like a fugitive entering a police station. He had come to bring Deke the lunch he'd forgotten, a seemingly innocent gesture that was, in reality, a catastrophic miscalculation. "Thought you might need this," Remy said, holding up a paper bag, his voice tight. The baptism for Remy began in that instant. It was an immersion not in water, but in the collective, frozen horror of the people in that room. For Deke, it was a baptism of confusion. For Hope, it was one of dawning, sickening recognition. And for Electra, it was a plunge back into a trauma she had fought for years to overcome. Hope was the first to find her voice, her protective instincts kicking in. "Deke, who is this?" Deke, blissfully unaware of the earthquake he was standing on, beamed. "Aunt Hope, everyone, this is Remy. My partner." The name landed in the silence like a bomb. The air was sucked from the room. Electra's face, once animated and bright, drained of all color. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she took an involuntary step backward, as if physically pushed by the force of the memory. The encouraging words she had built her new life upon, "You are stronger than what he did to you, it's in the past," crumbled to dust in that single, terrifying moment. Hope's expression shifted from confusion to a ferocious, maternal fury. "Remy Price," she whispered, the name a curse. Remy's facade of calm shattered. "Deke, I should go," he muttered, already turning back toward the elevator. But it was too late. The angry threats, though unspoken, were already materializing, radiating from Hope and Electra in waves of pure, undiluted rage. "Deke," Hope said, her voice dangerously calm. "Do you know who this man is? What he did to your cousin?" Deke looked from Hope's livid face to Electra's traumatized one, to Remy's guilty, downcast eyes. The foundation of his new, happy life was cracking beneath his feet. What is she talking about, Remy? What did you do?" This was the moment of truth. The encouraging words Remy had used to build his relationship with Deke, "I'm not that person anymore, the system rehabilitated me, all I want is a quiet life with you," were about to be tested against the brutal, unassailable facts of his past. The aftermath was a study in devastation. In the CEO's office, Rich Forrester received the news from a frantic Hope. His reaction was primal, a roar of pure, unadulterated fury. "He did what? He's dating Deke? And he had the audacity to set foot in my building?" Ridge's fist came down on his desk, making the photograph of his family tremble. "After what he did to Electra? After the humiliation, the terror? I'll have him thrown out of this city. He's violated his parole. I'll make sure he goes back to a cell and never sees the light of day again." These were not idle angry threats. They were the promises of a powerful man whose family had been attacked. Ridge's protective instincts were the cornerstone of his character, and Remy's return was not just a personal affront, it was a direct challenge to his authority and his family's safety. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the office, Deke was confronting the ruins of his relationship. "You're a stalker?" Deke's voice was hollow with disbelief. You digitally violated my cousin? You posted those pictures? The ones she still has nightmares about? That was you?" Remy, cornered and stripped of his lies, could only offer a pathetic defense. "It was a sickness, Deke. A madness. I was obsessed and I wasn't thinking clearly. I served my time. I went to therapy. I'm not that man anymore. What I feel for you is real. It's the only real thing that's ever happened to me. These were his encouraging words, a desperate plea for the same understanding that had been granted to Sheila and Luna. He was presenting his own baptism, his time in prison, as a transformative fire. But the sin was too fresh, the victim too close to home. Don't, Deke choked out, tears of anger and betrayal in his eyes. Don't you dare use what we have to excuse what you did. You lied to me. You made me your unwitting accomplice. I introduced my cousin's tormentor to her as the love of my life. The shame and horror on Deke's face was a more potent punishment than any prison sentence. Get out. Get out of my sight, and don't ever come near me or my family again. Yet, as history has proven on BNB, never is a fragile concept. The stage is now set for the most improbable redemption arc of all. How can Remy Price possibly finagle his way back from this? The mechanism will likely mirror the paths of Sheila and Luna. It will require a brutal, public confrontation with his past, one that goes beyond a simple apology. He will have to face not just Electra's rage, but the collective judgment of the entire Forrester empire. The encouraging words will have to come from an unlikely source. Perhaps it will be Deacon Sharp, a man intimately familiar with the long, difficult road to redemption. Seeing his son's heartbreak, and recognizing a glimmer of genuine remorse in Remy, Deacon might become a reluctant advocate. The kid did his time, Ridge, Deacon might argue, his own history lending the words a certain weight. I'm not saying forgive him. I'm saying maybe don't have him drawn and quartered in the public square. Perhaps it will be Hope, whose capacity for forgiveness is legendary. Seeing the genuine, devastating impact on Deke, and recognizing that destroying Remy completely will only prolong her family's pain, she might, against all her instincts, argue for a path of banishment over destruction. The true key, however, will be Electra. Her journey will be the most difficult. To grant Remy any measure of grace would be her own baptism, an immersion in a forgiveness so profound it defies human nature. It would not be a quick or easy process. It would involve months of therapy, of rage, of setbacks. But if she can eventually find a way to separate the man from the monster, if she can utter the impossible words, I don't forgive you, but I release you, it would be the most powerful act of strength she has ever undertaken. The precedent has been set. Sheila Carter, a multiple-time murderer, sips coffee at Il Giardino. Luna Nozawa, a corporate trader, designs in the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations. In this world, redemption is not a reward for the virtuous, it is a narrative tool for the damned. Remy Price stands at the precipice, his past an anchor threatening to drag him down. But in the turbulent, forgiving waters of Los Angeles, even the heaviest anchors can be cut loose. The angry threats will roar, the baptisms will continue, and the encouraging words, however faint, will always whisper of a second chance for those the world has deemed beyond saving. The journey back for Remy Price is not a question of if but how, and his arrival at Forrester Creations was merely the first, shocking step into the fire.